Red light. That was the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes that morning. Not sunlight, not a warning siren, just the cold red glow of an eviction notice burning on my door terminal, counting down the hours until I had nowhere left to sleep. I was Dane Corwin, station engineer, 3 months out of work, and 11 cycles behind on rent I could not pay. My hands were shaking, not from fear exactly, but from the kind of tired that comes from doing math you already know the answer to. There was no way I was making that payment, not today. Not this week. I pressed my palm against the cold metal wall of my tiny room and took a breath. Then I heard footsteps in the corridor outside, slow and deliberate, the kind of footsteps that belonged to someone who already knew they had won. The door slid open before I even reached it. She stood there wrapped in shifting violet armor that looked more like living skin than clothing, 4 eyes blinking at different times, each one seeming to study a different part of me. Her name was Threl Ka, my landlady, and she was Kesh, one of the oldest and sharpest trading species in this whole sector of space. Behind her, 2 station security drones hovered, their red scanner lights sweeping the floor like they were already measuring how much space my belongings would take up once they threw me out. I stood up straight, even though my legs wanted to give out. "I know why you are here," I said. "Then you already know what happens next," she answered. Her voice was strange, layered, like 3 voices speaking the same words a half-second apart. 11 cycles unpaid, Mr. Corwin. That is not a small number. "I have nothing left," I told her. "My last contract fell through. The station cut hazard pay for outside workers. I have been trying. Trying does not pay debts." I looked past her at the drones, at the corridor that led to the transport docks, and my stomach dropped. If I got put on that transport, I was not just losing my apartment. I was losing the only foothold I had left on this station, in this system, in this life I had been fighting to build since I left Earth 5 years ago. "Please," I said, "just give me a little more time." She tilted her head, all 4 eyes narrowing at once, and for a long moment she said nothing. The silence stretched so long I thought she was going to nod to the drones and end this conversation with a single gesture. Then she spoke again, and her voice had changed. Slower. Sharper, like she had just thought of something she liked very much. "I have a proposition for you instead," she said. I blinked. A proposition? "There is a section of this station," she continued, "sublevel 9, that has been closed for repair for the last year. The structural supports are failing. The coolant lines are leaking radiation no one can safely measure. 60 environmental suits have failed down there in the last 12 months. 14 certified engineers have refused to go back after their first shift. Even my insurance drones will not enter that sector anymore." I felt a cold knot form in my chest. That sounds like a death sentence, not a job offer. "It is both," she said, and one of her eyes crinkled in a way I had learned meant she found something amusing. "If you succeed, your debt is erased, fully, and I will pay you hazard wages on top of it. If you fail, well, you were already being evicted today. The only difference is where you end up." I stared at her, trying to find the trick hidden somewhere in her words, because there always was one with the Kesh. But the offer was simple, brutal, and honestly, it was still better than the alternative sitting outside my door. "Why me?" I asked. "Why not send in another crew?" "Because every crew I have sent down there has come back empty-handed, or has not come back at all," she said. "And because humans have a strange talent for doing things that should not work." "That is one way to put it," I muttered. "Do we have a deal, Mr. Corwin?" I looked at the drones one more time, at the countdown still glowing red on my door, and I made the kind of decision that humans have always been famous for making. The kind that looks like courage from the outside, and feels like desperation from the inside. "Deal," I said. Her 4 eyes blinked together, and something in her expression shifted, though I could not tell if it was satisfaction or worry. "Report to the lower lift at dawn," she said. "Bring nothing you are not willing to lose." That night I barely slept. I sat on the edge of my bed running old maintenance schematics through my portable display, trying to understand what I was walking into. Sublevel 9 had been part of the original station structure, built decades before the newer sections were added on top of it. The station had drifted slightly over a geological fault line in the asteroid it was anchored to, and that drift had put stress on supports that were never designed to handle it. 60 suit failures, 14 refusals, no drone willing to go back in. I should have been terrified. Instead, somewhere underneath the fear, there was a strange, stubborn spark of excitement. This was a problem. And if there was one thing I had always been good at, it was solving problems that everyone else had already given up on. At dawn, I met Threl Ka at the lower lift, dressed in a patched environmental suit that had seen better decades. She looked me over with all four eyes at once. "That suit will not protect you from everything down there," she said. "Neither will anything else," I answered. "Might as well go in with what I know how to use." She made a small sound that might have been a laugh, and the lift doors opened. The moment we stepped out onto sublevel 9, I understood why 14 engineers had turned back. The corridor stretched out in front of us like the ribcage of something that had died a long time ago. Support struts hung loose from the ceiling, swaying slightly with every distant vibration of the station. A thin green mist drifted along the floor, leaking from cracked coolant lines, smelling like burnt metal, and something sour underneath it. My suit display lit up with radiation warnings the second I crossed the threshold. "You built your station over a fault line," I said into my comm, trying to keep my voice steady. "We built it before the fault line," Threl Ka corrected from a safety terminal 3 decks above me, watching through a network of old cameras. "Geological drift. Not something we could have predicted at the time." "Comforting," I muttered, and started walking. The first problem I found was worse than I expected. A main support strut on the eastern wall had cracked clean through, held together by nothing but rust and luck. If it gave way, it would bring down 2 decks of ceiling on top of whatever was underneath it, including the coolant lines that were already leaking radiation into the air. "I need a portable brace and a plasma welder," I said into the comm, "and someone to keep an eye on radiation levels while I work, because I am not going to be able to watch both." "I will monitor you myself," Threl Ka said. I almost laughed. "You are trusting a human with your station's structural integrity." "I am trusting the only person who agreed to walk down there," she replied, and there was no humor left in her voice at all. I got to work. Structural welding is not glamorous. It is slow, careful, exhausting labor, the kind where one wrong calculation could mean the difference between a stable ceiling and 40 tons of metal falling on your head. But there was something steady about the work that helped quiet the fear crawling up the back of my neck. Math does not care if you are scared. It only cares if you are right. Hour after hour, I moved from strut to strut, checking stress points, running temporary braces, patching what I could, and marking what needed a full replacement later. My suit display kept flashing warnings I had learned to work around, instead of panicking over. Sweat dripped down my back, despite the suit's cooling system working overtime. Around the 4th hour, I found the real problem. It was not just structural fatigue, it was the coolant lines themselves, an entire section of shielding that had been installed using a bad batch of materials that should never have passed inspection in the first place. That explained the suit failures. That explained the radiation spikes that no diagnostic drone had ever managed to properly trace, because the drones were only programmed to trust the readings, not question them. "Threl Ka," I said, "I found it. The shielding batch installed here is defective. It is not holding radiation the way it should. That is what has been killing suits and burning through crews for a year." There was a long pause on the comm. "That batch was certified by the Coalition Shielding Board," she finally said. "It should be impossible for it to fail like this." "Well," I said, running my scanner over another section of cracked shielding, "it is failing anyway. I need replacement plating, and I need it fast, because every hour we spend down here breathing this air is an hour closer to a suit failure of our own." "I will have supplies sent down immediately," she said, and for the first time since I had met her, there was something in her voice that sounded almost like respect. The next 2 days blurred together into a rhythm of work I had not expected to find in a place built to kill me. I stripped out the failing shielding panel by panel, replacing them with salvaged plating and improvised seals, using tools that were never designed for exactly this kind of repair. More than once I had to improvise a fix using nothing but a multi-tool and a length of scavenged conduit, trusting my own hands over the diagnostics when the two disagreed, because I had learned a long time ago that machines only know what they are told to expect, and this station had stopped behaving the way anyone expected a long time before I ever arrived. On the third day, Threlka came down to the safety terminal in person, instead of watching through the cameras. I could see her through the reinforced glass, all four eyes fixed on me as I welded the final brace into place along the eastern corridor. "That should not have worked," she said quietly over the comm, watching the readings stabilize on her display. I wiped sweat off the inside of my visor, which never actually helps, but you do it anyway. "We are good at things that should not work," I said. "It is kind of our whole thing." She did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost some of its usual sharp edge. "In 300 years of managing this station, I have never seen anyone solve a coalition-certified materials failure with scavenged conduit and stubbornness." "Give it time," I said. "I am not finished yet." By the end of the week, Sub-Level 9 held, every strut reinforced, every failing shielding panel replaced. The green mist that had drifted through the corridors for a year was gone, and the radiation readings on my display had dropped to numbers a person could actually survive walking through without a suit at all. I stood in the center of the corridor, exhausted in a way that went all the way down into my bones, and looked at what I had built. Not perfect, not pretty, but solid, safe, mine. Threlka met me at the lift when I finally rode it back up to the main level. She had brought no drones with her this time, no security escort, nothing but herself, standing quietly in the corridor with all four eyes fixed on me as the doors slid open. "You look terrible," she said. "I feel worse than I look," I answered, pulling off my helmet and breathing station air that did not smell like burnt metal for the first time in days. "Your debt is cleared," she said. "Fully, retroactively. And I have filed paperwork listing you as station structural consultant, effective immediately, with hazard pay included for the work already completed." I stared at her, trying to do the math in my head, and getting a number so much bigger than what I had owed that I had to ask her to repeat herself. "That is a lot more than rent," I finally said. "You solved a problem that 60 certified engineers and every diagnostic drone in this sector could not solve," she said. "Using tools I would have thrown away as scrap. I would be a poor businesswoman to let someone like that simply leave my station because of an unpaid debt." "So this was never really about the rent," I said, understanding hitting me slowly, the way it always does when you are too tired to think quickly. "No," she admitted, and for the first time all three layers of her voice said the exact same words at the exact same moment, instead of echoing slightly apart the way they usually did. "It was a very efficient way of finding out what you were made of, Mr. Corwin." I leaned against the corridor wall, letting myself finally relax now that the danger was behind me, and managed a tired laugh. "Turns out it is mostly stubbornness and bad decisions." "Good," she said, already turning to walk away, her violet armor catching the light of the corridor. "Sub-Level 6 needs the same treatment next cycle. I expect you at dawn." I watched her disappear around the corner, and stood there for a long moment in the quiet, listening to the steady hum of station power running through walls that were finally, truly stable. 3 days later, I sat in the small station canteen with a cup of real coffee in front of me, something I had not been able to afford in months, when a woman I recognized from the engineering registry sat down across from me. Her name was Nora Whitfield, one of the 14 engineers who had refused to go back into Sub-Level 9 after her first shift there. "I heard what you did down there," she said, watching me carefully. "I got lucky," I said. 60 suit failures were not luck," she said. 14 of us walked away from that sector, because we did the math, and the math said we would not survive it. "What did you do differently?" I thought about it for a moment, turning the coffee cup slowly in my hands. "I did not trust the math completely," I finally said. "I trusted what I could see and touch and fix with my own hands, and I let the numbers catch up afterward, instead of before." "That sounds like a good way to get yourself killed," she said. "It nearly was," I admitted, "but it also worked." She studied me for a long moment, then reached into her jacket and pulled out a data chip, sliding it across the table toward me. "There is a maintenance contract opening on sub-level 6 next cycle," she said. "Threl Ka is putting together a team. She specifically requested you lead it." I picked up the chip, turning it over in my fingers, feeling something settle into place inside me that had been missing for a very long time. Not just relief, not just safety, something closer to purpose. "I will take it," I said. Nora smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from anyone on this station since my hazard pay had run out months earlier. "Word travels fast around here," she said. "Humans solving problems nobody else will touch. You might end up starting a trend." "Someone has to," I said, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I actually believed it. That evening, I stood at the observation window near my new quarters, the ones Threl Ka had upgraded me into as part of my new consultant contract, and looked out at the stars scattered across the black beyond the station hull. Sub-level 9 hummed quietly beneath my feet, stable now, safe now, because I had refused to walk away from a problem that everyone else had already given up on. I thought about the eviction notice that had been glowing red on my door just 1 week earlier, about how close I had come to losing everything, and about the strange, sharp deal that a violet-skinned alien landlady had offered me instead of throwing me out. Some deals you cannot refuse, I thought, not because you have no choice, but because some part of you was always going to say yes. Behind me, my new door terminal chimed softly, no longer glowing red, no longer counting down toward disaster, just quietly displaying a simple message from station administration confirming my new contract, my new quarters, and my new place on this station that I had almost lost forever. I turned away from the window, allowed myself a real smile for the first time in months, and got ready for whatever sub-level 6 was about to throw at me. Because if there was one thing I had learned from all of this, it was that the universe was full of problems that looked impossible right up until someone stubborn enough refused to walk away from them. And apparently, that someone was me.